Good afternoon. This is Animal Uncontrol. Welcome to MuttHeads. Today's topics are a couple of things. One, I would like to make an addendum to the BSL fails from last weekend. And the other thing I would like to do is get the ball rolling on what I would call political dogism. Dogs in society are a political issue. They're as political as guns or abortion, which means that any change to the regime regarding dogs is going to get a ridiculous amount of scrutiny. Before I dive into that, something rather odd happened this week. Last week, where is that? Yes. Last week, I raised the issue of not just pit bulls, but like large dogs generally. Pretty much every other pet in human communities. Okay, and I'm making an important distinction there. I'm not talking about cows on dairy farms. Cows are zoned out farm animals. You cannot have a cow in your 400 square foot downtown apartment, at least in the vast majority of places. However, you could have a dog the size of a cow. That's perfectly okay because canine supremacy, among other things. But it was interesting. I raised the issue of large dogs in society. Here's what I posted.
You don't like. My narrative is that all large dogs should be zoned out of human communities. If not all dogs, period, but at least the large ones. I want to give another shout out to, where is that? Yeah. This was a comment left on one of my blogs. And here's what this person said. My friend's 92-year-old mother got around well, sound mind, was out for a walk when a Great Dane being walked by its owner jumped up and knocked her flat on the ground.
Okay, enough of that. What's interesting is just Wednesday of this week, what happened? 5 Great Danes kill owner in northwest Iowa because having like 5 large dogs in the home is such a great idea. Although I believe they killed her technically when they were outside, but that doesn't matter. We try to restrict the number of dogs in the home because even a relatively like laid back dog, when put into a pack of other dogs, will revert to pack behavior and can become very dangerous. So, you know what I'd like to dive into or back into? Again, briefly recap last weekend, dive into like why BSL is such a raging dumpster fire of fail. The point I raised last weekend were these, one reason is that the dialogue has been hijacked by these adept people. Okay, that means all dogs except pits. These are dog lovers that are, firmly committed to all the values of dog culture but want to ban pit bulls. And the short answer, you can rewatch the last video, I go into more detail, is that these people basically want to have it both ways. They want dog rights and dog owner entitlement, but without pit bulls. Now, what happens is that pit people or even non-pit owning people will apply all those like, canine supremacist values to dog or breeds of dogs that some people don't like. In a way, these, pit defenders are actually more consistent. And, I actually respect the pit nutters more than the dog nutters who don't like pits, because the pit nutters at least have sort of a consistent ideology. It's sort of congruent with itself. Now, I don't agree with any of them, but, I can sort of respectfully disagree with the pit bull people because they are applying these pro dog, these dogs first values more consistently. Now, I'd also like to, segue into political dogism, because one result of all this dogs first advocacy, in other words, pushing the notion that all dogs are absolutely pure, they're super sentient, they're super smart, they have, absolute moral authority. Okay, everything they do is good. That if you go into that space and try to ban or restrict pit bulls or any dog breed, what that does is, yes, that is going to trigger an enormous backlash. Essentially, what you have is sort of this half-assed social justice movement, and no, insult to our, socially justed minded folks, because really social justice applies to people and not animals. So if you look at, where is it? So, I just Googled like pit bulls, or, pit bull bans are racist. And you get all these things. You get all this, propaganda from these various groups. Like, who are these, I mean, some of them are individuals acting on their own, but there's actually organized political advocacy here. So we have, like, the American Pit Bull Foundation, Animal Farm, Bad Rap, My Pit Bull is My Family, and that's just a sampler. There's many organizations that promote this. Okay, so like, let's take a look at, some of the propaganda they use. Now you got to understand that in their mindset, discriminating against a dog breed is racist, because if a dog is the equivalent of a human, or maybe even better than a human, then in that framework, discriminating against any dog breed is basically, even if it's not per se racist, it's de facto racist. Because on one hand, you're saying dogs are people, but this, subset of dogs needs to just piss off, okay? You can't do that. So again, if dogs are people, they're protected by the Constitution, various civil rights acts, Miranda, and so forth. Now, a lot of these ADEP people are too dumb to, connect those dots, but that's what happens. And that's one big reason why we have this, okay? That is why that the enforcement of these things is crap. It's crap. And it's crap because dogs have been elevated to or above the level of human beings in our society. And these social justice values are being applied to them. They're saying you can't discriminate against this based on how it looks, can you? That's racist, it's fascist, it's Nazism. So what happens is many people either, and it's not just dog cultists either. Sometimes you will get sort of misguided social justice types get sucked into this because they see this doggy discrimination as being, in a sense, sort of like the next frontier of social justice. Okay, this is unfair discrimination. It's Nazism. Now, I'd like to segue into a little bit. I'd like to delve into, or get more into, how they, being these, pit bull aficionados, or perhaps the, misguided social justice types, I want to, segue into some popular entertainment. Because remember, and it's very important to understand this, when they say that, pit bull bans are racist or fascist or whatever, many of them believe it. I mean, okay, yes, some of them are just trolls, or, perhaps just, somebody trying to disrupt the, conversation in a bad faith way. But, if you go through these, I mean, look at all these. You've got these posters. I love this poster. That's a good one. There it is again. Oh, I love this one. This is another, like, propaganda poster. And see, it's like, it's using all of these, social justice, vernacular. And it's not just social justice, it's political vernacular. Okay. And this applies to dogs and dog only, right? Like, no cat person is going to tell you you're a Nazi because you think that pet tigers are a bad idea. I like cats, and I think that a pet tiger is a bad idea. But there's no like enormous, I mean, look at all these groups, okay? And this is just a sampling of them. Okay, where's the like, colossal, political movement to normalize lions and tigers as pets? There isn't one that I know of. I mean, there might be a very, very small one. It would probably be like less than 1/10 of 1% of this. But what's important is that, again, this is a misguided social justice movement. And how they see us are, as Nazis. Okay. This is, any attempt, really not just a pit bull ban, but any attempt to restrict dogs or dog ownership in any way is per se fascism. And this is a movie I really enjoy. This is how they see us. They say if we implement a pit bull ban, or really any restriction on dogs or dog ownership, we are in fact creating a Nazi regime. So how do they qualify, say, like Miami-Dade, Florida? They would say that that is literally, it's Hitler's Germany with palm trees and Cuban restaurants. That's how they would characterize it, okay? And that needs to be defeated. It cannot be allowed to stand anywhere. I like this movie, Inglorious Bastards. See, so in their mind, they see these pit bull regimes this way. So in this movie, okay, see, and I'm going to spoil it. So skip forward if you haven't seen this movie, or if you don't want it spoiled. So what's going on here is that this French farm family, okay, this is in Nazi-occupied France, and this French farm family is hiding Jews from the regime, okay? And now, see, he knows that, okay, see, they're going essentially like door to door looking for Jewish people because there's some that are unaccounted for. So if we skip forward a little bit, okay, so this SS agent, okay, his job is to seek them out and find them. Where are the Jews? You will show me where they are. But if you substitute that again for these like social justice dog nutters, okay, you replace that with pit bulls or whatever dog breed that these, Nazis don't like. So you would have people like this going door to door saying, where are the pit bulls? You will show me where the pit bulls are. That's how they see it. Okay. And that is a result of elevating dogs to the level of humans or above the level of humans. So for some of them, they would see a pit bull ban as being worse than this. Now, the ironic thing is, as I pointed out last week, there's basically no penalty for breaking these dog laws. None. And that is why you have this, okay? Really, if they were serious, any and all, pit bulls, taken into the city shelter would be summarily put down. Okay, not necessarily going door to door, but they're not. Okay, when these dogs come in, probably their owners get rid of them because they're too aggressive. So then these aggressive pit bulls get, cycled through the shelter, put back into circulation, free to aggress again. Now, if you fast forward in this movie, it's a very, very tense scene because, okay, this French family is, harboring pit bulls. I mean, Jewish people, and this SS agent really knows it, but he's trying to get the French guy to confess. He's not just going to trash the place trying to find him. He's basically using, psychological tactics to get the, this French guy to confess. Also, some, thinly veiled, threats like, you tell us where the pit bulls are, we will leave you alone. I think, where does this get? I think it's right about here. Yeah. Do you have something to tell me? I don't know what's up with the sound quality of this video. It's terrible. See, and this guy knows, he's like, the gig's up. He's like, I'm busted. Because what's going to happen if you ban pit bulls, it's going to be just like this. You're sheltering enemies of the state, aren't you? So anyway, enough of that. So yeah, I won't spoil any more of the movie, but the thing you have to understand, because of all this like political advocacy, what that means is that those type of restrictions either are not put into place, or they're repealed, or they're not enforced. I used to ask these ADEP people, I'd say, okay, look, here's a question. It's a rhetorical question. Is that, again, a foundation of, dog cult ideology is that dogs and dog owners can be subject to zero restraint ever, period. Okay, so that means that either there are no laws, or if there are laws, they're not enforced. In MuttHeads #1, I got into that a bit more, that there's just no restraint placed in the dog population whatsoever, because it's essentially the zeitgeist dictates that it's wrong to do so. So I would ask these people, okay, you're fine with all these other laws being broken, like leash laws, too many dogs in the home, dog at large, dog crap everywhere, dog noise polluting, even dogs like attacking people. It's all good. Any laws trying to restrict that need to be summarily ignored. So now you want another dog law. Explain to me, and I know it sounds like a loaded question, but I want to know why this new dog law is not going to be a dead letter like the rest of them. So they're going to enforce that, but nothing else? No, they're not going to enforce that. What happens is when you ban pit bulls, at least in most places, you're going to wind up with this, where the authorities aren't simply ignoring this, they're actively enabling it. And I think, one reason for that, going back to the social justice aspect of this, is that these people who are, lying to protect pit bulls, they say, oh yeah, this is a white American bulldog. Maybe that's not the best example, but yeah, bulldog mix. Okay, all this like breed, terrier mix, all this, breed misidentification is, see, these people, see themselves as being like this guy. They're on this, really brave, really risky crusade to basically, shield this, oppressed minority from the fascist state. So they're fine with lying because, wouldn't you lie to protect somebody like this? Okay. Of course, when the SS first shows up, he's like, oh yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what Jewish people? That's what these people are doing. That's how they see themselves. And they see themselves that way because dogs have been, put on a pedestal in our society. I'd also like to digress a bit into, so in any case, what's the solution? Like, what do we do? And the thing is that looking for, simply just saying let's ban pit bulls isn't going to do crap. In fact, it's actually counterproductive, because when you do that, you stimulate all these social justice types. Okay, what you're gonna, it's just gonna cause a huge backlash. And you know, perhaps many of these people think they're doing the right thing. They're not, but they think they are. Okay, they think that, you know, I'm this, like, you know, brave, like, rebel fighting this fascist system. That is how they see themselves. They see themselves like this guy. Okay, that's how they see themselves. And these people will pour out of the woodwork anytime you suggest a breed restriction or pretty much a restriction on any dog behavior. I've been accused of being a Nazi because I think that leash laws should be adhered to. That's not made up, that's actually happened. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Look at some good, bad dog. Oh, I like this one. Well, this is a book, Pitbull, the battle over an American icon. Because remember, you know, this is a dog nation. I don't know what the take was on this. I don't know if this was like pro Pitbull or anti or neutral. Dog equality. Equality. What does that remind you of? Again, see, these are all political narrative. See, apartments banning dog breeds causes problems for pet owners. Yeah, it's like Jim Crow banning dog breeds. They're so racist. Okay? They say my pit bull can't be trusted. From my experience, humanity shouldn't be trusted for what some have done to pit bulls, okay, and abuse against pit bulls. Well, really, who abuses pit bulls? It's like pit bull owners. But, you know, in their mind, it's us dog critics or dog haters that are committing all these heinous acts, not them. I think that simply breeding pit bulls is abuse. Yeah, love that. So, what rather than just jump up and down and focus all the attention on one or two dog breeds, what could we do instead? Okay, and the thing I think to do is let's have a conversation on what's acceptable. Okay, now, with the exception of dogs, you know, pet ownership is limited to, you know, small, relatively innocuous creatures. Like, for example, that's why we allow, say, house cats, like in the 10 to 15 pound, you know, bracket, and not like lions and tigers. It's why we allow iguanas and not like crocodiles. Again, in most places, you could probably have a pet tiger if you really wanted to. But the thing is, there would be a ton of like bureaucratic and administrative hoops you would have to jump through to get that, to accomplish that, for that to be, you know, allowed. You can't just, you know, take a crocodile to a downtown apartment tower. You can bring a pit bull or a Presa Canario, but not a crocodile. So I think the thing is, we need to have like a conversation on what's acceptable. Now, some people I know are going to want to say, well, let's just ban dogs, you know, completely. But before we even go there, like, what's the case for it? Okay, 'cause I hear all these statistics being thrown around, and not to scold, but I believe that many people don't know how to construct a proper argument. Okay, so for example, if I say that 37% of widgets have bleems, which really doesn't mean anything, right? Because you say, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Or is it perhaps an ethically neutral thing? Like, is a bleem in a widget something we want or not? That's what's important, okay? Now, one reason, or the primary reason we have this problem, is that, you know, dog attacks on humans and other animals have been normalized. They've been normalized by, you know, decades of, you know, basically pro-dog political activism. Okay, it's deeply ingrained not just in our culture but our legal system that Fido can do no wrong. So, So what I'd like to do is like, let's have a conversation about what's acceptable. So the question isn't like how many people get mauled by dogs every year and is that number going up or down? The question is that acceptable? Okay, so if a dog goes off property and attacks somebody, is that something we want or not? Now, dog cultists push that's, it's probably at worst, it's like ethically neutral. Dog works in mysterious ways. But what we need to do is, before we even get into, like, okay, what dog breeds are allowed, we have to establish that aggression by dogs, or really any pet, although 99.999% of pet aggression is from dogs, we have to establish that that's not acceptable. Okay, like I can't walk a half a block without some mutt trying to take a chunk out of me, and that is unacceptable. Okay, additionally, every place I go, well, not every place, I'm exaggerating a little, but sounds like a dog kennel at feeding time. And noise polluting uselessly is also a form of aggression. Whether it's, threatening people, noise polluting, injuring people, it's all unacceptable. So what we need to do first is just establish that, look, these dog attacks are not acceptable. We will no longer put up with this. So what do you do when it happens? Well, aggressive dogs need to leave the community, preferably out the back door of the shelter into the dumpster. Okay, they need to be gone, and their owners need to be held accountable. Because I think that's this BSL push, right, from these adept people is, in a sense, it's a red herring, because somebody like me will come up and said, okay, while everybody's standing around playing the breed ID game, do you think we could hold dog owners accountable? Could we do that? Like, let's just do that. I mean, shouldn't everybody be able to agree on that? Now, they don't. They recoil in horror because even a whiff of like personal accountability is like, again, it's like sunlight to a vampire, to a dog owner. They do not want to be held accountable. So what they're saying is, it's like, it's okay to sick your dog on somebody. It's perfectly fine, but just don't get a pit bull. That doesn't make sense, because what they're saying is, in the abstract, that the act is acceptable, but the means are not. And that doesn't make any sense, because first you establish that the act is unacceptable. And then you look into say, okay, do we restrict the means also? Because again, you can't make a case for restricting the means when the act is acceptable. Like, for example, if I was to say that, like, bombing people, like blowing up buildings, is totally acceptable. It's totally, you can blow up anybody or anything you want with zero consequences. Oh, and you know what? We need to, like, restrict the sale of, nitroglycerin. It doesn't follow. But that's what they're doing. They're saying dog attacks are acceptable, but we need to ban pit bulls because they attack too many people. So let's establish this, okay? Dog attacks are totally unacceptable, okay? Let's start there. Before we do anything else, let's establish that as a first principle. Now, when we get into the means, we can say, okay, in terms of like what dogs are allowed or how they're kept or what other regulations are in place, let's get into like what, in terms of the means, what is acceptable. Now, some people just want to ban dogs everywhere, but to that I answer, well, you know what? I want to be the first man on Neptune, and that's very unlikely to happen also. So what they're saying is that, like, pit bulls just the mere presence of them are unacceptable. But all this other doggy crap is. Okay, but then it raises a question, what is acceptable in terms of like keeping dogs in the community? So, like, what else in the space is unacceptable? Okay, so we could say that, okay, breed background. Okay. Now, the ADEP people say that this is the only thing that matters. And I debate this a lot also. It's like, yes, I know that breed background, okay, like genetics, okay, is a factor. It's a factor. But just like anything else, like it's not the only thing we should be concerned with, okay? Because here's the other thing. What's interesting to me also is the, let's call it like prior performance. Okay. Does that dog over there, like, does Fido have a bite history? Yes or no? That's important also. Okay. Now, these ADEP people say that this doesn't matter, right? So, the pit bulls need to leave. They just need to disappear regardless of their, performance or their behavior. But like, say, a Doberman that sent 6 people to the hospital on 5 different occasions, that dog gets to stay, according to them. Okay? And I say no. That's unacceptable. Any dog, okay, that gets to stay, that's like not on the blacklist, gets one chance to get it right. One pitch. Pit bulls get 0 pitches. The rest of them get 1. Okay? Because remember, we're trying to, curb these attacks. Okay? We're not just, you can't base it entirely just on the dog's genetics. And yes, again, for the 5 millionth time, I understand that the breed background is a factor. A major factor. So what else do we have is like, well, we have like how the dog is kept. There's a statistic, you could look it up. I don't know how accurate it is. But dogs that are tethered or chained are much more likely to attack than dogs that are not. So again, these ADEP people would say, well, this is irrelevant also. Right? For example, the dog across the street from me, okay, he was, because of the way he was kept, he'd, become very aggressive. He didn't bite anybody that I know of, but he was very, very aggressive because, probably due to the frustration of being tied up 24/7. But again, these ADEP people say, well, that doesn't matter either. But, these things, do impact these outcomes. Okay, so these need to be a factor also. Okay, what else do we have? Well, we have like the sex of the dog and whether it's spay-neuter status. Okay, because intact male dogs are much more likely to attack than say than say a spayed female of the same breed. Okay, we're sort of everything else being equal. Now, of course, these ADEP people, many of them will claim this is not a problem either. Now, what can add to this also is like, sort of the breeding status. Okay, so it's kind of the same, element. Okay, because if you take like an unneutered male dog that's being bred, again, everything else being equal, that dog is going to be more aggressive than, say, a spayed female, okay, of the same breed. So this is because you see, if you dig into these dog attacks, frequently it relates to some kind of breeding outfit. Okay, it's very, very common. So, this needs to be, so I would say that like all dog breeding needs to be zoned out of residential areas. It's an agricultural activity, okay? Like you can't breed cows in your postage stamp size, like suburban backyard. So, why do you get to breed, pit bulls or Rottweilers or any other breed of dog? Okay, all dogs within, say, city limits should be spayed and neutered. Again, provided there's going to be any dogs. And they're going to, squeal and moan at this, but it's like, look, these things are factors also. These things matter too. It can't only be, this cannot be the only focus, particularly when you have all this cheating going. Remember, these social justice types are going to fight you on these breed bans. I believe that, setting rules here, I mean, again, these are very difficult to enforce, but I think we would get some traction on these as well. Okay, so we need to have a discussion on what's acceptable or unacceptable, because you can't say, okay, this is totally acceptable or unacceptable rather, right? But all this other stuff, the bite history, how the dog's kept, breeding status, that's all fine. Nothing to see there, just move along. And I say like crap. No, we need restraint in these other areas also, because our entire like animal control code cannot consist of a pit bull ban. That's ridiculous. But that's what these adepts, push for. So this is just something to think about. I want to delve more into political dogism and how these, dog fanatics, have hijacked various like political narratives from the traditional left, traditional right. You can argue that, well, that's what they're doing with this, with these, where is that? Where's that photo? Did I close that? Oh no, here we go. That, like, for example, this, um, how they've, basically hijacked social justice narratives to, protect these dogs. Okay. They've, politicized this to the point where, again, if you, want to restrict any dog breed, you're going to have outcomes like this, right? You're going to have guys in jack boots and, death's head hats on going around like, terrorizing the landscape. But they hijack other narratives as well from the left and the right. And I think it's important for those people to stand up and say nonsense. Okay. But that's what we have. So I'll leave it there for now. Think about it. This is Animal on Control. And as always, people first.